strike channels just because you're a bastard is not the way to go.
Yeah, but then again, that's how he rolls. He wants everyone to think the way he thinks. He wants everyone to believe what he believes. He's one of those guys that hates every song that the DJ is playing at the club, and he wants everybody to hate what he hates. And basically, I think from the looks like it, when you think about it, he was the one who was expecting me to follow his path. Because you may remember on Ken's program that one time he told me to get out of the air quotes dark side. I was like, and work with who? He was like, me, work with me again. But even though he was the one who gave me the boot months before that, you may remember that he sent me that text message saying, I will no longer watch any of your shows. I'm doing because you went on YR show and talked about how I was, even though he was in the wrong for the way he treated Prince Idol that one night.
Mm-hmm.
The man is angry to the T, and I think it's best we just let him rot in his bomb shelter. That's all I got to say. He's not the Vikings we used to know. I don't know what happened to him. He's been like this way before his cousin died. It just, I don't know. I do not know myself. And yes, it is pitiful for that to happen. All right, so are we ready?
Yeah.
Yes, we are. Welcome to Music Maniacs, everybody. It's me and Arknolia for tonight. And in our ongoing series of albums that made a huge impact, we're going to definitely take a look at one that massively made a big impact. It is considered the first true heavy metal album. It came out in February 1970. In fact, this month marks the 54th anniversary. I believe it's a couple weeks from now, or I'm not too sure what date it was released. It was February something there. But I do know that it made an impact. It made a massive impact. And it also was considered probably one of the most doom metal albums out there. I'm referring to, of course, Black Sabbath's first album, simply called Black Sabbath, came out in February 1970. It was on Vertical in the UK, Warner Brothers in the US. And we know the iconic album cover. It was filmed at a treadmill in Oxfordshire, England. The model on the cover was not revealed until 2020. Her name is Louisiana. I'm assuming Louisa, I think it is. I have trouble pronouncing that name. Louisa Livingstone. She was 19 years old at the time. She was photographed by a guy who was known as Keef, which was spelled Keef. She was completely nude underneath that black cloak that she was wearing. She had to get up at about 4 a.m., head down to the watermill. It was extremely cold. Now, they did some shots before, but some of them were not too, they were kind of considered too risque. But the one they decided to go for was her just standing, holding her cloak closed. That's the image that made the album cover. And wouldn't you know, boom, it became a massive success. Now, the band Black Sabbath, as we know, singer Ozzy Osbourne, bassist Geezer Butler, Tony Iommi on guitar, and Bill Ward on drums. They originally was known as Earth, but after viewing a poster of the movie Black Sabbath from 1963, starring the great Boris Karloff, they figured, hey, people pay money to see movies that will scare the crap out of them. Why don't we come up with something different? Music that scares people, which kind of was the theme at that time. I mean, considering the poverty background that they had in Birmingham, England, their birthplace, where they originated from. I mean, from what I understand, in many stories that it was violence, pollution, gangs, industrial plants. It was a basically doomy area, needless to say. And it's also considered the birthplace of heavy metal. I mean, Queen emerged from there. Judas Priest emerged from there. I guess Def Leppard emerged from there just as well, if I understand.
Yeah, but they're not
Many,
heavy metal.
what's up?
Yeah, but they're not heavy metal.
Yeah, that's pretty much here. But basically, a lot of bands, UK bands, they emerged from Birmingham, England, no doubt about that. And I guess in the quotes of Rob Halford from Judas Priest, the message was basically letting the world know what they were going through, what they grew up with. Kind of like rappers were talking about East Side LA, like Ice-T, NWA, Ice Cube. They were talking about what was going on in their environment. And I guess that was the main motive behind the Sabbath sound and the structure of the lyrics of their songs. It was basically talking about real life. It was talking about the hardcores of real life. Now, let's get to the album. It generated negative reviews by the critics upon its release, but it was a massive commercial success, reaching number 8 on the UK charts and number 23 in the US charts.
Yeah, that's pretty typical of the critics. They don't like an album until the public does, and then all of a sudden they're, oh, it's a great album.
Yeah, that's how they usually are. But then again, who the hell listens to critics anyway?
True.
Yeah, the same thing with Led Zeppelin. Critics couldn't stand them, but look how massively successful they were during their 10-year existence. We're crying out loud to be G's. I mean, like, it has been retrospectively garnered what is called a reappraisal as one of the greatest and most influential heavy metal albums of all time. It is included in Robert Demiry's 2005 musical reference book, 1001 Albums You Must Hear Before You Die. Now, guitarist and founding member Tony Iommi said that the debut album was recorded in a single 12-hour session on 16th of October 1969. He said, quote, "We just went in the studio, did it in a day. We played our next live set, and that was it. We actually thought a whole day was quite a long time. Then off we went the next day to play for about 20 pounds in Switzerland." Aside from the bells, thunder, and rain and sound effects that added to the beginning of the opening track, simply called Black Sabbath, and the double tracked solos on NIB, which probably apparently means Nativity in Black, but the group disputes that. And of course, Sleeping Village. There are virtually no overdubs added to the album. Iommi recalls recording it basically live. Iommi said, "We thought we had 2 days to do it, and one of the days is mixing. So we were like, Ozzy is singing at the same time. We just put him in a booth, and off we went. We never had a second run of most of the stuff." And this
That doesn't
basically
sound
was
like it.
exactly, but you never know. Some things can come out of so magnificently perfect out of something that doesn't seem perfect when you look at it there. Now, the key to the band's new sound was basically the distinctive playing style that Iommi had, that he developed after an accident in a sheet metal factory where he was working at the age of 17, in which the tips of his two middle fingers of his right hand were severed. We know that story definitely.
Mm-hmm.
As a result, he had to come up with fake fingertips to attach to those two tips on his right hand. Of course, I had to tape them up to make sure. And as a result, he had to get the lightest guitar strings around. Later on, he had to detune the guitar for other albums like Master of Reality and Volume 4 to ease off some of the pressure on his fingertips. Because apparently to this day, they're still kind of tender.
I imagine so.
Yeah, exactly. Now, he'll- from a dish detergent bottle, he made some of these fingertips. He tuned the strings down to make it more easier to bend the strings, creating a more massive, heavily sound. He said, I play a lead of chords and I have to play fifths because I couldn't play fourth because of my fingers. He explained in an interview in 2013 that helped me develop my style of playing, bending the strings and hitting the open string at the same time, just to make it sound wilder. Geezer Butler then said, back then the bass player was supposed to do all these melodic rhythms, but I didn't know how to do that because I've been a guitar player before that. So all I did was follow Tony's riff. That made the sound heavier. Now, I only started recording the album with a white Fender Stratocaster, his guitar choice at that time. But after a malfunctioning pickup forced him to finish the recording with a Gibson SG, a guitar that he had recently purchased as a backup but never really played. The SG was a right-handed model in which the left-handed Iommi played upside down, kind of like what Hendrix did with his
Yeah.
Strat. Soon after recording the album, he met a right-handed guitarist who was playing the left-handed SG upside down, and the two agreed to swap each other's guitars. It is that SG that Iommi modified and later put out to pasture at the Hard Rock Cafe. Ozzy Osbourne, who on the US version of the album was spelled, it was his first name was actually spelled Ossie. Believe it or not. I
Hmm.
know, but I saw that. It's like, oh, wow. Well, but then again, at the time, the guy who was writing down the credits and details probably didn't know how to spell it. Osborne was always spoken fondly of the recording of the album. He stated in his autobiography, quote, once we were finished, we spent a couple hours double tracking some of the guitars and vocals, and that was that. Done. We were in the pub in time for last orders. We couldn't take any longer than 12 hours in total. That's how albums should be made, in my opinion. Drummer Bill Ward agrees, telling Guitar World in 2001, I think the first album is just incredibly incredible. It is naive. There is absolute sense of unity. It's not contrived in any way, shape, or form. We weren't old enough to be clever. I love it all, including the mistakes. In an interview for the classic album series, Butler also added, it was definitely live in the studio. Our producer, Roger Bain, is a genius the way he captured the band in such a short time. And in his autobiography, Iommi says he played down the producer's role, insisting, quote, we didn't choose to work with Roger Bain. He was chosen for us, and he was good to have around. But we didn't get a lot of advice from him. He suggested a couple of things, but the songs were already fairly structured and sorted. Now, let's go to the music of the album. They were very dark at the time. The opening track, the song Black Sabbath, is basically it was basically inspired by a paranormal experience that Geezer had went through prior to recording the album. Apparently, here's what he described in an interview. I was raised a Catholic, so I believed in the devil and God. There was a weekly magazine called Man, Myth, and Magic that I started reading, which was all about Satan and all that stuff. That and the books by Aleister Crowley and Dennis Wheatley, especially his book, The Devil Rides Out. I moved into this flat that I painted black with inverted crosses everywhere. Ozzy gave me this 16th century book about magic that I believe he probably stolen from somewhere. He plays Geezer puts it in the airing cupboard because he wasn't sure about it. Later that night, Geezer wakes up and he sees this black shadow at the end of the bed. It was a horrible presence that frightened the life out of me, he said. I ran to the cupboard to throw away the book, but the book had disappeared. After that, I gave up all that stuff. It scared me shitless. Now, the lyrics to NIB were basically written in the point of view of the Horned One himself, Beelzebub, Satan, Lucifer, who, get this, falls in love with a mortal woman and becomes, air quotes, get this one, a better person. I know. When I heard about this, like, really? Huh. But then again, you got to remember there are these villains in all these sci-fi movies who had developed strong feelings for this woman or that woman.
Yeah.
We've seen that many times before. Contrary to popular belief, the song is not abbreviation of Nativity in Black. According to Ozzy's autobiography, it was a reference to the nib-shaped beard or goatee that Bill Ward was sporting at that time. The lyrics of two other songs of the album were written about stories with mythological themes. For example, Behind the Wall Asleep was a reference to a short story by H.P. Lovecraft called Beyond the Wall Asleep. The wizard was inspired by Gandalf, the character from The Hobbit, the J.R.R. Tolkien novel, and it also includes the harmonica solo played by Mr. Osborne himself. Now, here's something worth noting. The UK version of the album featured a cover tune by the band Crow, a song called Evil Woman. It was a big hit for the band in the US. Sabbath decided to cover
They're
it
only.
as it's a, yep, they're only up. They decided to record it to make it sound more, give it a more commercial appeal. It was suggested by their manager at the time, Jim Simpson. But for some reason, I'm not too sure it was the copyright issues or what. Evil Woman for the US release was replaced by Wicked World. And I kind of figured it was recorded separately because of the sound of the song compared to the rest of the album.
Probably
Now,
an afterthought.
pretty much here. Now, the artwork, as I mentioned, featured a model named Louisa Liverstone. What am I talking about? Why did I say Silverstone for some dumb reason? Louisa Livingstone. She was 19 years old. She had dark hair. She was completely buff except for a black cloak that she was wearing during the whole photo shoot. The man that excuse me, the photographer who took that iconic photo was Keith Macmillan, often referred to as Keith, no, excuse me, Keef.
KEEF.
Yes, thank you. Who was in charge of the overall design. Standing in front of a watermill located in Oxfordshire, England, the woman was portrayed by the model Louisa Livingstone, whose identity was not revealed until 2020, just before the 50th anniversary of that album was mentioned in the press. She said in an interview, "I'm sure Keith said it was for Black Sabbath, but I didn't know if that meant anything that much to me at the time." Now, Livingstone recalled adding that it was extremely cold during the shoot. She said at the top of the program, as I already mentioned, it was about 4 o'clock in the morning. Keith was rushing around with dry eyes, throwing it into the water, but that wasn't working. So they ended up using a smoke machine. Now, according to McMillan, Livingstone was wearing nothing underneath that black cloak. And they did some experimentation was done just as well, involving some slightly more risque photographs taken at the session. Now, I do not know if there are any outtakes for this, but I'm certain that I could like to check them out for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they decided that none of those outtakes worked. Any kind of sexuality, he stated, took away from the more forebanding of the mood of the album. She was a terrific model. She had amazing courage and understanding of what I was trying to do. Now, this also was not allowed in the US version. A gatefold of the album featured an inverted cross, the band's logo, and a short poem written by Mr. Roger Brown, who was assistant to Macmillan. The band, when he was presented with test pressings of the album, when the album was presented to them, they were not happy about this inverted cross in the gatefold. They were upset. They didn't really approve of it, but then again, that's how record companies are. They often add something to stir up controversy. And at that time, a lot of kids were getting into other forms of religion, whether it's Wicca, Satanism, Buddhism. A lot of that was going on, believe it or not. And of course, according to Big Geezer, he said that when he saw that, he was completely shocked because that's not what they wanted. But what can they do at that time?
Right.
Now, here's something else to add on to this, occult perception of Black Sabbath. There was a party in the U.S., I believe, held in Los Angeles by the U.S. label Warner Brothers Records, and the master of MCs, the one presiding this party, happened to be, get this, Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan.
Right.
And then when that was revealed, definitely all the Christian fundamentalists and all the parents and all the teachers started labeling Black Sabbath as Satan's right hand men. In the years since the iconic photo shoot was shot, Livingstone herself, get this. So I checked out some of this, and it is quite different than what we expect, but it is pretty good. She releases electronic music under the name Indebra, Indreba. I even checked out some of her stuff on YouTube, and a lot of the comments were like, "This is the woman that was on the Black Sabbath album cover. Sabbath led me here." All that kind of stuff there. Now, of course, there is a I guess there was a lot of, well, I'll let you take over, man. I'm getting tongue tied again, as always.
Well, the only point that I want to make at this juncture is Black Sabbath probably was the first heavy metal band, but
Yeah.
there were other metal bands before, or other bands before that came close.
Yes, Blue
I mean,
Cheer,
Blue Cheer's a
Steppenwolf,
good example.
Iron Butterfly with their sound and their songs, including Indigada de Vida.
A case can be made for the Kinks.
Yeah, they came up with some heavy ass riffs, that's for sure, no doubt about that.
Maybe the Yardbirds.
Yeah. It fits to say that a lot of these early 60s groups often gave birth to the heavy metal sound. And we also got to include Eric Burden and the Animals just as well.
Yeah. There was another. Oh, Frigid Pink.
Yeah, you mentioned that a few times with their cover version of House of the Rising Sun.
Which is extremely heavy.
Absolutely, there, no doubt about that.
I mean, there were other groups that came close, but nobody put it all together in one package like Black Sabbath.
Absolutely, because Black Sabbath took on a different persona. It was like a more dark persona. It was a more dark atmosphere in their sound. You got to remember,
E-
like it. Go ahead.
Even though Deep Purple came before Black Sabbath, their first three albums weren't heavy. They were close, but not quite. They were more midstream.
Yes.
They became heavy with their fifth
Yeah.
album,
Which.
excuse me. Their fourth
Yeah. With
album
the.
was John Lord with an orchestra.
Yes. And let's not forget the Mark II lineup released with albums like Inner Rock, Machine Head, Fireball, Who Do You Think We Are, or What Do You Think We Are, if I'm correct.
Who do we think we are?
Who
I
do you
mean,
think?
you could make a case. They weren't the first heavy metal band, but these all these groups we mentioned laid the groundwork for Black Sabbath.
Mhm.
They kind of experimented and came close, but Black Sabbath put it all together.
Yeah, exactly. Because and it fits to say that Black Sabbath was the one who really took the detuning of the instruments to a whole absolute level. They did that in many of their albums and their concerts. I remember there was a release that came out in 1980 called Live at Last that was recorded 5 years prior. And I believe it was recorded, I think, before you went to the studio to record Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, because the lyrics to their version of Killing Yourself to Live was totally different. I think it was a song that Jesus came up the last minute and decided to perform it live.
It's
And
amazing how
all,
many songs are kind of created in a live format, and then somebody will tell them, you guys really need to put that on a record.
yes, like we said, Liz stated that many of the stuff on the first album was basically road tested material. Oh, I also got to point this out. Now, the UK version of the first album basically featured the songs as is. For example, on side one, it was Black Sabbath, The Wizard, Behind the Wall of Sleep, NIB. But the US version, I don't know if it was probably Warner Brothers, most likely it was Warner Brothers, because they decided to add the little interludes or intros to which particular song. They gave those pieces titles. For example, da 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 da. The beginning of Behind the Wall of Sleep was called Wasp, and the bass solo that Geezer does prior to NIB was called Basically. And also the little introduction to the acoustic introduction to Sleepy Village was titled A Bit of Finger. Now, of course, they did the same thing with the Master of Reality album.
Yeah,
Yes, they added a little interlude names for which part section of the song,
I actually kind of
like
like that.
yeah, it is. It's kind of basically it was kind of the same thing King Crimson was doing on their first four albums. Like for example, Circus, including Entry of the Chameleons, or Epitaph, including March for No Reason and Tomorrow. And I guess probably Warner Brothers was trying to follow that mode, I guess. But you got to admit, it was a unique thing that they were doing.
Hmm.
Yes. Now, I also got to mention that. Let me see if I can find something else here because there's a lot more here. The reception of the album was highly respected now. As a result, now we have a Black Sabbath bridge located in downtown Birmingham. I guess there's probably a Black Sabbath Boulevard or Black Sabbath Avenue, if I'm correct, just as well around the area.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Exactly. And now that we know what really Black Sabbath was about, is it fitting to say that all these, ministers, preachers, all these TV fundamentalists of the Christian right wing. Do you think that they now owe the members of Black Sabbath a big ass apology because of the fingers that were being pointed at them?
Won't be
Because now
happening.
I know, because they're afraid of shedding that ego, I guess they have. And also, let me also mention something about the Sleepy Village track. That apparently was about understand. Understand that song was about village unaware of something happening pretty soon, like a big catastrophe, like a
Yep.
village in the Swiss Alps. They're unaware that in about 48 hours from now, a massive avalanche is going to take them all in. Something of that nature, if it's to say.
Or the one with the volcano. I forgot the name of it.
Oh yeah, Mount St. Helens.
No. Ancient
Hmm.
time.
Okay, Pompeii.
That's it.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Man, I was reading about Pompeii. I was actually I watched In Search of special about Pompeii with Leonard Nimoy as the host, and like, wow, what happened to that city was like unbelievable, man.
Yeah, people were
Unbelievable.
frozen in their positions, all kinds of stuff.
Exactly. And wow. Wow. So if it's now, there have been many covers and many interpretations of Black Sabbath first album. Rob Halford's band at the time, Fight, they had a thing called the Bullring Brummies. They did their version of The Wizard, but it was detuned, of course. It featured, members of his current band at that time, Fight, along with Geezer and Bill Ward. It would featured Rob Halford using a distorted voice for his vocals. That was included on the Nativity in Black Sabbath tribute album, which came out in 1993. Type O Negative also had their version of the song Black Sabbath. And here's something I got to mention. You know the group, the Charlatans?
Kind of.
Yeah, they had that song called Love Food. Love me, say that you love me, which I could not stand. But it was a big around the but it was big in the later 90s, no doubt about that. They did versions of Black Sabbath songs like Iron Man, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath in their style. Now, that no doubt was unique and a half, needless to say. I heard their version of Iron Man. It's like, huh? This is different, no doubt about it. But
Well,
then
generally
again,
speaking, about covers, if you mimic the original song, anybody can do that. But if you
yeah,
kind of put a spin on it or do it your own way or whatever, that makes
yeah,
it kind of unique.
that is true. That is very, very true. I mean, like for instance, I can imagine. Let's see here. Let me come. Let me. I can imagine, with somebody taking the rhythm from Kanye West's Love Lockdown, making it stepping up the notes of the how do I describe it here? I cannot put it into words. My apologies, everybody listening.
Well, a good example would be how the Beatles covered songs.
Yeah, true.
They made it to where it was recognizable, but they made it their own. In other
That's
words, things
true.
like their version of Words of Love doesn't sound like Buddy Holly's, but it
Yeah,
does.
that's true. Yeah, that is true there. Now, the Crow cover that they did for the first record, Evil Woman, I heard the original of that version of that
Oh
song. It's
yeah, I've
kind of
got it.
this, yeah, absolutely. It kind and both are kind of similar. The only difference is the Crow version has a horn section, if I'm correct.
Yeah, and it's funny because I always thought that it was the other way around, that Crow covered Black Sabbath, but not to
Yeah, I was
be.
wondering that. I guess it fits. It was kind of funny about. I was wondering how the members of Crow would feel about their song being covered by Black Sabbath. But then again, somewhere on YouTube, you got to check out Sabbath doing blue suede shoes. I remember seeing that on a show called Radio 1990 on the USA Network. And I was like, wow, they did their version very, very heavy. No doubt about that.
Well, another example is Blue Cheer, Summertime Blues. Ain't nothing
Oh,
like the original, but it is.
yeah, it's heavier than the original, needless to say.
Easily.
Oh, yeah, very
Because
easily.
the original version by Eddie Cochran was a rocking little tune. I mean, a cute, neat little tune.
Yep. And Blue Cheer took a hold of that and just went blam, horse head with no apologies.
Well, it was the same song, but it was different.
Yeah, they just added instead of course as the instead of adding the low voice at the towards the main chorus, they do little solos, one on bass, the other on guitar, on drums. Now, Sabbath's first album, I'm not too sure if you heard about this. It's been immortalized in the Funko Pop stream there. Now, you know what Funko Pop is? They make these little figurines of
Right.
various characters. They did with Lemmy, Kilmister, Joey Ramone. They had various Star Wars characters, Marvel comic book characters, Iron Man. They did all that. They did a special version for that first Black Sabbath album with a Funko Pop of Miss Livingstone, black cloak and all. And while researching this album, I noticed in the Google images there is an actual statue of Livingstone from doing that exact same pose as the album cover. It's a statuette, and underneath is the logo of the first album underneath. Now, many people who have visited that particular spot tried to mimic the exact same pose as well, but it's kind of hard to when you don't have a black cloak and the sky is sunny, needless to
Right.
say. But it is an iconic area, no doubt about that. I'll bet everybody out there tries to preserve that spot because of the iconic persona that being on that album definitely provided.
I got two questions.
Yes.
Pick your, well, they're not actually questions or requests. Pick your favorite song off that first album.
Oh, the song Black Sabbath.
Yeah, I got to
That's
agree with that.
because the tone of that album is definitely gothic, without a doubt. I
And that's the
remember,
one that sets the mood.
yep, absolutely. And I told this story a few times back when we was in Southeast Michigan. I borrowed the cassette format of that first album from a neighbor just to check it out for myself. And then I was amazed. I was like totally fascinated with the songs, the sound of the album, the production. And what I did, and this is kind of dumb of me to do this. I mentioned this a couple of times in the past. We were discussing this album. I take my plastic amplifier into the garage at that time, try to play the songs or come up with my own songs similar to that sound and structure that they had on the first record. And it was a lot of times it was rainy, it was such drizzling, but I was trying to capture the feel that that album provided when I first listened to it. This is not an album that you play during a warm, sunny day. Mm-mm.
No.
This is an album that you play on a cloudy day, whether it's warm or cold or blistering cold, rainfall included.
Well,
This
one of
is
the
a,
advantages of being old is I was around when that album came out, so
I
I got
know,
to
yeah.
hear it firsthand.
I was around too, but the only thing was I was a wee kid at that time. I was still learning about things like going to kindergarten, watching the banana splits on TV,
Hmm.
learning my ABCs and such. It was when I fully discovered that album. That's where I realized, wow. And I stated many times before, I tried to play. Play like Tony Iommi. I admired his guitar work. I admired his how he played. It was like he played like he had six fingers on each hand.
Yeah.
Needless to say, of course, we all know the situation Iommi went through.
Okay, my second request.
Hmm.
We know this is the landmark album for Black Sabbath, started them off.
Yep.
But pick your favorite Sabbath album.
Oh, it's a tough one
I know it's
because
tough.
I know it's tough because I'm kind of cross between the first album, Master of Reality, for the lyrics and the tuning, of course. That album was a major player in the movement of the grunge rock movement, no doubt about that.
Yeah.
I'm also was a fan of the album Mob Rules. I was a fan of Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die. I was also a huge fan of the Born Again album when they had Ian Gillan on vocals. That record blew my mind away when I first heard it. I bought it on cassette. I was like, I was looking to buy me a Sabbath cassette and like, let me try Born Again. I listened to it, fascinated and overpowered by the sound, the structure of the songs. Boom. So it's really hard to point out which is my favorite Sabbath album. Oh, by the way, I have to include this disc, the highly underrated Headless Cross from 1989, with Tony Martin as their frontman. That record is badass as just as well.
And mine's going to surprise you, but it's not
Mhm.
by far.
Ah,
Volume 4.
ah, no surprise there.
But real close is Technical Ecstasy, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath,
Hmm.
and Master Reality.
Right there.
You can tell I
Yep.
kind of prefer the Ozzy albums, but
Yeah,
I do like some of the others too.
that's true there. Was you a fan of the album 13 when it came out in 2013 by chance?
It's kind of a downfall for me. I mean, it was not bad, but it just wasn't really Sabbath like Sabbath. You know what I mean?
Well, of course. Well, the songs were good, no doubt about that.
Yeah,
But the thing was missing was Bill Ward, obviously.
yeah.
I understand he got the drummer from Rage Against the Machine to fill in on drums. And of course, he went on tour as a trio with somebody else playing the skins. And a lot of us at that time were just appalled by this. Like, how could you not go out with one of your founding members, Bill Ward, the man who encouraged Tony Iommi to get in touch with this Ozzy Osbourne who's looking for a gig?
Did
And
you did you
go
ever
ahead.
see him in concert?
Only one time. That was back in 1983 with my then sister's boyfriend and a couple of our neighbors. They played the Cobo Arena. Quiet Riot was the opening act. And it was the
How
one
much of
where
the
they,
original guys were there?
well, it was Iommi and Butler, along with Ian Gillan on vocals and the drummer from ELO, Bev
Hmm.
Levan on drums. At that time, he was filling in for Bill Ward because he was having health issues. I guess he was trying to get kick drugs for the final time there, which he finally did.
Good.
And I guess it was, for I understand, many people were there to see mostly Quiet Riot.
Hmm. I would have been the other way around for me.
Yeah, but same thing
I
with
saw him
here.
once myself. Uh, they did it with Incubus and Pantera.
Pantera, yes, I remember you mentioned that. And that was around the reunion tour back in 1999.
Yeah, I saw pretty much. I don't think Bill Ward was in it, but the other three were.
No,
I mean, it had
no, it
Ozzy.
was Bill. No, it was Bill Ward. He was included in
I
those
had the
shows.
total original band then. Wow.
Yep, absolutely. There,
And they
it was.
played mostly all of their good stuff from the early days.
Yep. Because man, it's kind of funny is that we spoke about farewell tours. You may remember the video cassette for the Last Supper that was released in 1999. It was supposed to
Yeah.
have been their final show as the original lineup. Not. They went on did a few Ozfest tours soon afterwards. I think the last one was probably in 2001, if I'm correct.
I don't remember what year I saw them off the
Hmm.
top of my head, but it had to be the 2000s.
Yeah, I think it may have been 1999 when they announced the reunion tour for that year. Because
That sounds about right.
yeah, let's also not forget they did a reunion show in Birmingham, England. That was recorded for the reunion album and release. They won a Grammy for their performance of Iron Man, About Damn Time. Of course, they have finally got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, About Time on that one as well.
Well, the guy, despite the fact that people are supposedly voting, the guy that runs that place, we've had discussions before.
Yep,
If he don't like a band, they don't make it.
that's true there. And the thing he mostly doesn't like was the prog rock genre, no doubt about that.
Yeah, that's why Jethro Tull's still not there, which just
I know,
shocks the hell out of me.
I
And of all
know.
people, the Guess Who?
Yeah,
Why?
I do not know. That's the thing that gets me about
Some
that. I
people
mean,
that
like,
are there, and then you got Guess Who sitting on the outside? What?
yep, exactly. I mean, like, I don't consider Madonna rock and roll, let alone Run DMC, let alone
How
Jay
about Dolly
Z.
Parton?
Oh gosh, and what she didn't want to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because for
Right, she
that
said
particular
she
reason.
wasn't wrong.
Exactly.
She was
But
trying to have a little bit of dignity in the thing, and she did succeed, even though she still got in.
yeah, but
I
well,
mean,
I
she
guess
did make her point.
yeah, it's true there. But you know what? Because of that, for the controversy, she decided to do a lot of rock cover songs, and she's put out a CD, an album called Rockstar, featuring all these guest performers on each song, including Stairway
Good
to
for her.
Heaven.
Good for her.
Huh. So she's now capitalizing on this Hall of Fame scenario, that's for sure.
Well, for a little time, she was in a group called, I think it was Trio, with Linda Ronstadt and Amy Lou Harris.
Yeah, that's true. Yes,
And
absolutely.
they
They
did a
released.
cover of After the Gold Rush, a good cover.
I see. Wasn't that Neil Young as well? Because he
That
released
was
that
Neil
album.
Young, yeah.
Yeah, so okay there.
That was the name of the album.
I remember. Now, going back to Black Sabbath, another album we got to cover is the second record, Paranoid. There's a lot of stories about the songs of that album, the topics of that album, the cover, the original meaning behind War Pigs. I think we you think want to talk about it right now, or you think we should just end the
Yeah,
show at
because it's
this?
not really an iconic one in the sense of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it's true there. Plus, it's a lot more commercially accepted when you think about it there. I mean, like Iron Man, Paranoid, Bears Wear Boots, still gets a radio airplay to this very day.
End of Doom.
Absolutely. Which to me, as I mentioned, is probably one of the best anti-drug songs ever recorded in the world of rock and roll. Listen to the lyrics and remember those lyrics next time you think about doing some dope.
And it's kind of like Neil Young's The Needle and the Damage Done.
Absolutely. Another good one there. All right, there. So, what are we doing for tomorrow night?
Good question.
I
I
have
thought
it.
we picked something, but I don't remember what it was.
Hmm. Did you ever get my email last night about something about doing TV memories?
Yeah, and you mentioned Jack Webb.
Yes, exactly. I wanted to spotlight this guy because I consider him the Dick Wolf of his time. And I suggest that we do so for sure, man.
Yeah, let's do that because we can talk about Dragnet. I saw
Adam.
only a few episodes because it was before my time, but then there's
Mhm.
Highway Patrol, Adam
Absolutely.
Adam 12.
Yep. Okay, so tomorrow night, TV Memories makes a comeback with our spotlight on Jack Webb. No doubt about that. And
Okay,
definitely,
what album do you want to discuss next week?
let's see. Do you have any ones in mind that you want to talk about? Hmm.
Oh, I mean, there are a few out there that made an impact. Derek and the Dominoes.
Yeah, we got to talk about that album. Let's do that. That's for sure there.
Okay, let's do that. But in the future, I want to discuss the Allman Brothers live at the Fillmore because that was the big one that put them on the
Yes,
map.
I'll let you have the realm on those there. Definitely for sure, man.
And again, Who's Next and Tommy,
Absolutely.
even
Got
though
to talk.
Choir didn't like them.
Well,
That's kind of funny. No one likes the Who, but they sold millions of albums.
no,
How?
they love the Who. I know they were braced when they made their comeback in 1989. That's for sure.
Then there's Pet Sounds, and the
Beach
Beatles
Boys.
still have a couple, three
Yeah,
actually.
yeah,
Rubber Soul, Revolver, White Album.
yeah. We got to discuss those. That's for sure. Especially Revolver, because that was the big one that everybody looks up to as the main Beatles album prior to the psychedelic period.
Yeah, because that kind of set a tone.
Yes. All right. So this concludes our episode of Music Maniacs for tonight. And
We
tomorrow
missed
night,
YR, but hey,
I know exactly. Well, his channel got struck, as we mentioned before we started recording this show there. And of course, thanks to apparently Minnesota Vikings fan, I should probably get a hold of him later on tonight, or probably after we're done recording here, to get the full scoop
yeah,
of what's
because I'm
going on.
curious as to why he got struck because there's no reason for it. I mean,
I
YouTube
know.
lets some of these jerks go out there and just strike channels because they don't like the guy.
Exactly. That's how Vikings operates. And yes, Vikings, I know you're going to rebuttal against this, but it's a well known fact. You've timed people out in various chats because you don't like them. He did it to Keith. He did it to Jacob RP. He did it to some other peoples. The man's got a hate streak like no one before. It's like,
Yeah, well,
and
let's leave well enough alone.
okay, because he's probably going to start bitching and moaning as always. All right, so I'll see you tomorrow night, Arc, TV
Alrighty.
Memories, spotlighting Jack Webb. And for Arknolia and myself, everybody enjoy the rest of your Wednesday evening. Bye bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
See you tomorrow night.
All right.